Hello BookTube, it's Eleanor here. I'm just getting sort of back into the swing of making videos, I suppose. I've just been in this weird reading slump, I suppose, but I'm not really sure how it came about. I got obsessed with Jane the Virgin, of which there's now 5 seasons, and I pretty much watched season 1 in less than a week, and so I think a lot of my time's been taken up with that recently. But I read a lot when we went on holiday for that week, and just really was reading quite a lot all the time. And I tend to be quite a mood reader, and I tend to read sort of vigorously when I'm just really enjoying what I'm reading, and I can't really put my finger on what makes me want to pick up a book, and I just really wasn't picking up books. And before, I was also listening to audiobooks loads on my walk to school, and I was addicted to listening to things on audio. In fact, I think in April, nearly 80 to 90% of the books that I read were on audio, which was really nice and quite odd for me actually, but I really enjoyed that. And some of them I was reading, listening to on audio and reading the book as I went along at times, and sort of mixing it and matching it, which I really enjoyed. I don't know, I'm going through a bit of a slump. However, I ordered a book a while back. I pre-ordered it and it came in last week. And this is the dust jacket. It's called Furious Hours, Murder, Fraud and the Last Trial of Harper Lee by Casey Sepp. And I kind of heard about this a while back, or the idea that this was going to come out, and then I sort of forgot, and then I saw it again advertised somewhere, and so I pre-ordered. And I've been really enjoying the idea of non-fiction more. I've just been really enjoying non-fiction. I've been wanting to pick it up, and I'm just allowing myself to just read and enjoy. And if I only read one book in the month, but it's a really good one and I've really enjoyed it, then that's fine. So I had quite a lot of sort of readathons I was trying to sort of get on with and do, and it just wasn't working. It had really pushed me like away from reading. So I let myself pick this up last night, and I've just been sitting downstairs with my daughter, and we've been doing some reading together for her school, and now she's just finishing her dinner, and I was thinking for the first time all month, I can't wait till she goes to bed so I can pick up my book and I can sit and read. That's not to say I don't enjoy spending time with my daughter, but if I want to read, it tends to be focused reading, so it tends to be when she's in bed I do it. And I'm just really excited. So I thought I'd come up, and I thought maybe I'll make a little vlog about reading this book and talking about it. Because if you are newish to this channel, you may not know that To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee is one of my favourite books. It's well, it is getting, there have been some recent ones that may have sort of started to nudge it into sort of top 5 category, but I loved that book. I really just fell in love with the writing and the story. Yeah, I can't explain it really. I came to it later in life, and I've just really enjoyed reading it. And so this is also, well, this is non-fiction, and it's basically the story of Reverend Willie Maxwell. It says he was a rural preacher accused of murdering 5 of his family members for insurance money in the 1970s. With the help of a savvy lawyer, he escaped justice for years until a relative shot him dead at the funeral of his last victim. Despite hundreds of witnesses, Maxwell's murder was acquitted, thanks to the same attorney who previously defended the Reverend. As Alabama is consumed by this gripping event, it's not long until news of the case reaches Alabama's and America's most famous writer. Intrigued by the story, Harper Lee makes a journey back to her home state to witness the Reverend's killer face trial. Lee had the idea of writing her own In Cold Blood, the true crime classic she had helped her friend Truman Capote research. She spent a year in town reporting on the Maxwell case, and many more years trying to finish the book she called The Reverend. Now, Casey Sepp brings this story to life, from the shocking murders to the courtroom drama to the racial politics of the Deep South. At the same time, she offers a deeply moving portrait of one of America's most beloved writers and her struggle with fame, success, and the mystery of artistic creativity. And so far, this is exactly what I'd hoped it would be. It is, we haven't even touched Harper Lee's name's not really come up. We are sort of reading about the Reverend, and it's only the first sort of section, but we're reading about the Reverend, we're reading about his early life, we're reading about his stint in the army, his marriage, and what happened to his first wife. And it's just written in such, like I say, a readable way, like a story. It's not written in non-fiction at all. It's written like a story. I feel like we're reading the story about this man, about what's happened. He has various different jobs, but one of them is as a reverend, and he talks at he's a reverend at these sort of revival churches, and it talks, you know, about how communities in those days were really small and people knew their neighbours. And how many pages am I in? I'm about 24 pages in, which I read last night, and the only reason I stopped was because I was really tired. And his wife's just turned up dead, and things don't tie up very well with what he's saying compared to what other people are saying. And yeah, I just think it's really interesting, and I'm really enjoying it. I also love the fact that it's got some pictures inside. That is Reverend Willie Maxwell, so it's good to be able to get a picture of him. So I'm just going to come back and let you know my thoughts as I'm reading this and how I'm enjoying it. But so far it's very readable. I like the writing style, I like the way we've started with the story, and I'm intrigued to see how sort of Harper Lee comes into this and how they sort of tie it up, and it just sounds like an intriguing story. So I'm really looking forward to sharing and talking a bit more about this with you as I read it. So I'll come back to you in the next few days hopefully and tell you a bit more, and yeah, hopefully it will also be a 5-star read, just like To Kill a Mockingbird, but we'll see. Hello everyone, so it's a few days later and I have been reading Furious Hours quite regularly and enjoying it. I'm really enjoying how it's been split into 3 sections really. You've got the lawyer, no, that's not right at all. You've got the Reverend, which is the bit that starts off the book, and it's talking about the Reverend and like all of these family members that keep dying, his wives especially, and how it's around the time when insurance policies became a thing for life insurance. And I like the way that we look at the Reverend and the things that are happening, but also we get a bit of a history lesson into life insurance and how that came about, and the intricacies of it and the issues with it in the beginning. And we also get a look into the history of voodoo and the sort of ideas behind that, and this kind of scaremongering amongst small towns, and you know, the things that they blamed certain things on. So I really enjoyed that sort of narrative with the sort of blobs of history in, which I thought was really interesting, and certainly informed me, because it was a lot of stuff that I didn't even think about or realise. So I really enjoyed that section. And then I'm currently on the second section, which is the lawyer. I'm just coming to the end of that section now. And so the Reverend is the whole way through his sort of court cases for, obviously, you know, they assumed he did it, but they could never convict him. His lawyer was this man called Tom, oh now, was it Tom? I wanted to say Tom Randy, but it's not, it's Tom Radney. Tom Radney was his lawyer the whole way through. And so when we start the lawyer, we start to go back and find out, you know, Tom Randy's history. He had quite a political background, and I thought that was really interesting. However, that sort of section, that few chapters really did lose me, because my knowledge, or like, I have absolutely no knowledge at all of American politics, or how it works, or the political parties, or how you run for politics. I mean, it's all way above my head. I struggle enough with UK politics, so that kind of lost me a little bit, but I got the sort of gist, I think, of what they were talking about. Although I think if you were American and you understood the American legal, American political system more, then that would, you know, be something that you would probably find a lot more interesting than I did. So that was probably the only section so far where I was a bit like, I wish I knew a bit more about politics. And then we find out how he sort of becomes a lawyer, and learn about sort of the way that he does lawyering, and how he ended up representing the Reverend, and then ended up representing the man that killed the Reverend. So it's all very interesting so far. We haven't yet had an appearance from Harper Lee, but the third section of the book is called The Writer, so I'm assuming that's going to be then us looking at Harper Lee's involvement and interest in these cases, and sort of bit more backstory about her, I suppose, and why this book never came to fruition, why it took her so long, what interested her in it. So I just think this book is brilliant. I'm really enjoying it. It's so interesting and easy to read. The bit with the Reverend, I mean, it's just so unbelievable to me that this man got away with so many things, so many murders, and collected all these life insurance policies. I mean, it's one thing, I mean, it's not really one thing to get away with murder, but in those days, like, it's one thing where they didn't have the sort of DNA and all the sort of capabilities to get away with murder, but to then be able to also claim like multiple life insurance policies on one person. Oh, it baffles me. It baffles me. I just yeah, it was well, it's just a brilliant book so far. So I'm hoping over the next few days to finish it. I'm now on half-term holiday. Yay. But hopefully the next thing you see will be me talking about the book a bit more and letting you know what's happened in the next few chapters. Hi everyone, so excuse the glowy face and the nighttime filming, but I have just finished Furious Hours, and I ended up giving it a 4. I thought all the way through it was going to be a 5 stars, but actually, this sounds terrible, but the reason I picked this up was because of the mention of Harper Lee's name, and this idea behind this book that she never wrote and that she was researching, and that sort of drew me in to pick it up. But the Harper Lee section, which is the third part in the book, actually I felt was a bit of a letdown. I feel like Harper Lee, there is a mystery that surrounds her, and this sort of reclusiveness, and the fact that she never brought out another book after To Kill a Mockingbird. And I know that we've got Go Set a Watchman, but that came like almost at the end of her life, and I just feel like that bit sort of dragged actually a little bit for me, and I was much more invested and interested in the story behind the parts of the Reverend and the lawyer, and so I appreciated how it all tied in together and sort of the reasons why this all came about, but I think that just let me down that side a little bit more. I think maybe that Harper Lee section perhaps could have been a little bit shorter and a little bit more succinct, because we seem to keep coming back to this idea that Harper Lee was reclusive. She just couldn't get herself together to write anything that she was happy with. She was a real perfectionist, and she just never got there with another book. And I just felt like that was, you know, hammered home quite early on, and yet we still continue to sort of follow her life quite intensely. The bits that I did enjoy were the beginning parts of that, where we talked about her relationships, you know, her relationship with Truman Capote, and the sort of the thing that sort of led her really onto being interested in this case, the Maxwell case, because she did go with Truman Capote when he was writing the book In Cold Blood, and she was his research assistant, which I had no idea. When he was writing the book In Cold Blood, she went along as his research assistant to collect information and to just sort of help him out really, and it was a good thing she did, because he didn't really lend himself to be someone that people wanted to open up and talk to about this horrendous crime that had happened in their town, and she ended up being someone that people would talk to, and sort of a gateway for him into gathering the information he needed for the book. So in that way it was really interesting, but I couldn't help but feel frustrated towards the end that she gathered all this information about her own true crime story that she wanted to write, and it never happened. And I just feel like yeah, I feel like the book ended on a real miserable note, because well, positive because this book has come out of it, I suppose, but I just wish that she'd finally written it. So that bit dragged a bit for me, and I felt like it could have been a bit shorter, but other than that I just really enjoyed this. It was a book that I just wanted to pick up all the time, and I was really keen to read, so I ended up giving it 4 stars. And it has now led me on to decide that there is 3 books that are on my shelves that really need to be read. One of them you would have just seen is Go Set the Watchman. I'm going to be reading this. I'm also going to be finally picking up Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, because this has just made me even more interested to read this now, knowing this sort of backstory. And then the 3rd book, which I have had out from the library for a while, so I do need to read it, is Swan Song by Kaylee Greenberg Jeffcoat, I think it is. Sorry, it's a library copy, so it's all shiny. And this is the story behind Truman Capote. I don't think he brought out a book, but I think he brought out some sort of newspaper article that was really scandalous, and he'd written all these secret private things that he had learned from all these women in his life in New York society, and it was like dropping a bomb, really. You know, he'd exposed all these women's secrets, and they never forgave him for it. And I just think it's really interesting to, you know, why did he do that? Why, you know, what was his reasoning behind it? And this is a sort of look, I think, into this. It says, hold on while I pick it up. It says, over countless martini-soaked Manhattan lunches, they shared their deepest secrets and their greatest fears. On exclusive yachts sailing the Mediterranean, on private jets streaming through Jamaica, on Yucatan beaches, in secluded bays, they gossiped about sex, power, money, love and fame. They never imagined he would betray them so absolutely. In the autumn of 1975, after 2 decades of intimate friendship, Truman Capote detonated a literary grenade, forever rupturing the elite circle he'd worked so hard to infiltrate. Why did he do it, knowing what he stood to lose? Was it to punish them, to make them pay for their manners, money and celebrated names, or did he simply refuse to believe that they could ever stop loving him? Whatever the motive, one thing remains indisputable. 9 years after achieving wild success with In Cold Blood, Capote committed an act of professional and social suicide with his most lethal weapons, words. So I think that's going to be really interesting. So I think I'm going to read Go Set a Watchman, then In Cold Blood, and then Swan Song. So yes, watch this space. Sorry, I'm all hot. It's really hot in my house at the moment. We've had a bit of a heat wave. Yeah, watch this space, because I'm going to go and read those now, so I'll be talking about them maybe in one video together soon. But this one was a really good 4 stars. I do urge you, if you're interested in Harper Lee's story and this sort of era really, and so a bit of true crime as well thrown in there, then it's definitely worth a read. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.